Hey everyone, welcome to week 5 Arrays part 2. In part 1, we have already covered the basic of arrays as well as we went through some of its perks and have seen a lot of use cases in terms of programs. I hope you all have watched that video and are cleared with the basics of array. Now, before actually gonna start with the part second, first, for less starting 5 minutes, we will just have a quick recap of all of which that we have learned in the previous video. So, the concentration of this session will be in a ratio of 70-30. That is, there would be 70% part that we will examine with the help of programs, and the remaining 30% would be based upon theory. Not taking your further time, let's get started. So for the recap of week 5 part 1, we went through what is an array, as considering it a collection of similar type of data types, elements stored into a contiguous memory. We have learned how an array is declared. We understood how the indexing of array takes place and how it starts with 0 and go to the number defined to the size. Then we went through how to initialize an array. After that, at the initialization, we actually learned about 1D array and viewed this with the help of some live examples so that we will have a better understanding. After this, we actually went to multi-dimensional arrays where we have stated the various formation of it and its use cases. We have also learned that even after being multi-dimensional, all the memory and all the elements that are saved in memory are continuous. At multi-dimensional array, we took example of a 2D array, which we concluded as a matrix. We went through the programs and learned how two matrices are added together to form a third summation matrix. After this, we actually went at how the indexing of a 2D array takes place. We took some examples specifically from our various sources. Apart from this, we have actually concluded some consent that how an element is deleted, how can we find the size of an array, and much more. While all these constants or the questions will be answered in today's videos, then we have your homework. I think you all might have been clear with this. Later on, all of these questions we will be discussing in the office hours at the end of this week. Now, today we are going to start with operations in an array. While we learned how to initialize an array, how to actually store it into memory, now is the part come where we will actually learn the operational basis of it. For using any array, as it's being used into the various data structures that we examine nowadays, such as starting from the stack that we find for arranging the elements or the applications that we have in our home screen, to going beyond and storing millions and billions terabyte of data into the large servers. The operations in an array holds a major concept. So let's dive into it. Starting from the first operation, that is traverse operation, also known as traversing of an array. Here we actually print all the elements one by one. As in the previous classes you have observed, when after taking the input as the form of elements in an array, we actually printed out the complete array. So this is what actually traversing is. The second we will be going to learn in further today would be insertion operation, where we are actually gonna insert elements to a given index of an array. That means to a particular location to be considered. The third one is deletion. While inserting, when there would be a certain time when the element isn't needed anymore, then we would be performing the deletion operation specifically in an array. Number four would be searching, that is known as a search operation, which is used to search a specific character or value or any specified data into the stack of array. And the fifth one, last but not the least, would be updating an element at a given place. So let's get started and have a look to all of them one by one. Starting from traverser. Traversing in an array means printing the element of an array one by one. This means you're traversing through elements of the array one after the other. A simple program of traversing an array will be shown into the upcoming slide. So let's have a look how traversal of an array actually takes place. Here we have a program, so we're just gonna duplicate a tab and start with a specific new program. Just copy the basic constraints. So here I'm again using the GBD compiler, which is an online based compiler. The reason behind using this is to create a sustainable ecosystem that every one of you who is watching this video can able to use it rather than any of the machine or device you are using. So let's start with traversing of an array. So there would be a very basic program that we are going to make right now. It would be like, let's start with initializing the array. Let's have it in the data type of an array. Let's name the array as ARR. And let's define a size of 5. Now, apart from this, we have the array. Now, let's actually define some variables that will be needed. So, as you see here, the array is actually a 1D array. So, all we need is just one looping variable, as there would be only one loop for taking input or output to it. Now let's start with it. I'm going to use a for loop for a basic instance. You could use any of the loop of your particular choice and likings. Now let's start with I equals to 0 and I is less than 5, and we have I plus plus the increment operator here, starting with the parenthesis. Let's have the input cn, and we have err, put the looping variable inside to make it continuous. Okay, so now we have the input. Now similarly we are going to take it for the output, and output this time we are going to make it more specific. Vi equals to 0 and I less than 5 and I plus plus. Again the parenthesis start, and we have the C out. Yeah. So at the part of output, let's now do the output actually to be in a vertical manner so that it would be easy for us to identify. Now I'm going to actually print all the outputs as with respect to its particular index. So let's write something to make it more interactive. The element at, now let's use a looping variable to represent its location, its indexing, I, and then position is, now we can actually print the array arri, just close the semicolon. So yeah, now our program seems pretty good. Let's just like do one more thing before ending is, and let's not forget is like return the value, return 0. Now we're good to go. Let's check is it work. Okay, so initially, okay, so here we have actually examined a fall through of this program. Now we will even get to know that like why it particularly happens. So error handling while using array is also an important part. So let's check what is out there. It actually says the element at 0. Okay, so here we can notice that there is a fall through, that we aren't able to find the particular optimization that is being needed there, as it's not actually taking the input out here. Now we will have a look at why this specifically is happening. So let's just have one thing, yeah, and elements array. Let's have it within quotes, and let's check now that like why is it falling actually, so that we would have a no. Okay, so enter the elements in array, it is executing, and at this point of time it is not taking place. So the reason behind this is this small mistake that we have carried forward here. So this type of error is actually known as a logical error. So we have to just change the initial operator here, as we have actually ported it to like I must be greater than 5, while we have declared I equals to 0, which is false. That's why this loop wasn't executing, it's just directly jumping into this. And as it has no value, so it is just like putting out the garbage values. So these type of error you would easily find while even you would be doing programming. All you have to do is to like find your error and correct it. And these are just logical errors that has happened. So that's not something big. So now let's see our program working. I'm gonna enter the elements. Let's say 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. So see, now here all our elements are actually putted. So it's like the element at position 0 is 1, element position 1 is 0. So make it like let's make it like a bit more optimized in order to like get a particularly accurate result. Yes, I'm just like putting one more thing here, and that is next line tag, which is \n. So like it would actually take every of the output to the next line, so that it would be like more better in terms of look, as well as I'm just like replacing this sign with a colon so that no one would be confused that either is showing it to be then negative values. And now that's how it works. Again, enter the value 2, 3, 4, and 5. And see, we have the output. The element at 0 position is 1. The element at first position is 2, 3, 4. So yeah, here you can also see that the indexing started from 0 and then goes to 4. So this is what actually happens in terms of array. The indexing always starts with 0 and actually goes up to the n minus 1th term. Now let's hop back to our initial traversing. So this is a perfect example of traversing. We have taken input and then we actually gone to each and every element and put it as your output to the user. So this is traversing is reaching each and every element of an array is actually traversing. So after traversing, we have the next operation as insertion operation. Now, insertion operation is used to insert an element into an array. Insertion of an element can happen at beginning, at middle, or at end of an array. Well, in fact, in the part of insertion, you could insert the element at any positions of your particular writing, as well as you could do it to any order. So some of the real life example for insertion is such as while in your school class, let's for example, you have 30 people enrolled and there's a new boy named Derek will came to your class. So in a database, if it's made with array at the data structure, there would be an insertion operation which will take place where the school administration will actually enter the details and insert it into the array that is storing the data of the class. So there would be an insertion operation taking place which will insert all the values to the specific points of the data set or to the data structure of that class. Now let's hop to an example. So let's cut this for now. Okay, so yeah, here I have already made an example for this so that like we could cover the maximum thing into the minimal time possible. Now let's get started with understanding each and every step and all the things that are going on in this program. So at main function, when we started the program, we actually declared an array with size 6. As it's a 1D array, there's only one looping variable I, and apart from it, we have ELE. Here, ELE actually represent an element. You could make a variable with any name, but it is highly recommended to use actually the variable like very significantly and with an accurate name so that the other person that would be looking to your program will able to understand. As well as while creating the big programs, you will face this issue that if you would just name the variable randomly, it would be hard for you to actually recognize that which variable you have used for what. Now, here we actually started to make it more friendly to the user. We actually like ask the user to enter 5 elements of an array. Again, we started with a for loop where we have taken input into an array. Now we asked for taking input of the element that user want to insert. And at this program, as we mentioned, that we could either save it into the first position or the last or the middle and even anywhere. So here, for example, we are adding it to the last position. Now, at this point of time, after taking the input of this element that user want to enter, we actually saved that to the last location as a loop gone to I, while the position of I would be the last number. We have actually put it the value of element to there. Now again we started with a for loop, and at this loop we actually printed the complete array. Now let's run the example and have a look. how it works. Let's enter the 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now it's asking for the element that we want to insert. So let's insert 100 out of here. So see, this is a new array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 100. Now let's start let's do one thing. Let's test it with another test case. And now I'm also going to show the importance of the data types while using an array. I'm going to enter first number as 100.509 and see, as soon as I enter this number, that is 100.509, the program actually fall and it actually given the garbage values as an output. Why this happened? The understanding for this is really important, as you know, the data type holds a specific value, and as computer is completely designed and developed to follow the instruction that a user gives. At this point of time, what happened? While we declared array as an integer type, we entered a float value, which specifically called the program, and the compiler analyzed that this is a false assumption, and as having no further commands for this particular reason, it actually fall through the program. So you have to be careful that what kind of data type are you using. Now, when a lot can wonder that how can we actually improvise it. So let's do one thing. Let's just convert this integer type array to a floating type array, and by adding a float here. Now again, let's run the program. Again, I'm gonna enter the same value as 100.509 and see, now let's enter, and the program haven't fall up to now. Now if I will enter the next value as 111, that's 111, and the next one is 132.6, the next is 209, and the last is 108.980. Now it's asking for the element to insert. I will insert just a 7, and let's see. So see, here we can easily see that the program runs smoothly, and the reason behind this, we've actually did whatever specifically the compiler wants us to do. So the compiler or want from humans is to write correct instructions. And this is actually a part that we all have to emphasize upon, that while writing any of the program, try to minimize errors that are generally done by applying long logics, as we have seen before in our previous program, while a small operator of greater than and lesser than, when placed wrongly, actually made the whole program false and fall through it. So now let's move back to our next operation that we have in a queue, and this is deletion. Now, while you have entered a specific element to a specific position, it is also important to actually delete it, as in a real life situation, it can be possible that you need to delete some of the data that is present out there and making just a clutter in your database, or that is no longer been in use. So For that particular point of time, we have specifically the deletion operation. So deletion operation is actually used to delete the elements from the array. As we have mentioned that a deletion program is shown below, which is actually we're going to run into the compiler right after. So here, like before actually executing the deletion program or going through it, first let's go further and examine the next operation first, and then we will do the deletion process. And this process is actually searching. Now searching operation is used to search an element in an array. Now this is one of the widely used operation, as also the motto behind like reading this first rather than going to an example or a live program of deletion is that even while deleting, we need to find that which element user want to delete. It might be possible that there are 5 students, namely Ayush, Ankit, Shivang, Shubham, and Himani. And user particularly wants to delete Shivang's data. So at this point of time, we just can't do it randomly because there is a specific location for Shivang's data. And to find that, we actually need a searching operation to take place before the deletion operation. At searching, we primarily emphasize upon finding an accurate position of the data stored in the array. And to find this, there are various methods that you're going to learn into the upcoming time, which would be including into our advanced course of this bootcamp that would take place later, where you will learn that there are multiple types of searching based on the various type of complexity. So here, this is another term that we just used, that is complexity. So before going ahead, it's important to learn its relevance and it's important. So the complexity basically in programming tends to define the space-time complexity. And what happens at the space-time complexity is actually for a good program, it is always the one which uses least time and consumes lesser memory. All the optimization that actually takes place will done to reduce the complexity of a particular program. Now, let's hop into a live example where we will be learning 2 operations altogether, that is searching and deletion. So here you can examine a program that we have already added for you. So let's hop and understand what this program is here for. Here we had an array initially of size 50. You could have it to as much size as you want. Now, at this program, you will notice some specific details. While as we are covering the major part of deletion, let's hop to another example first, and then we are going to cover that example for the insertion part. Now, I have chosen this particular example to be examined first is because here you will see how we are going to use an std library, the bit/library, which get us enabled to use specific functions that we will find in this program. Here, we are actually dynamically analyzing the length of the array with the help of the specific functions. Let's hop into the program. So, this is also an important point to be added here. While you're reading any of the program or you are going through any of the program, rather than going to an approach of top to down, it is always better to start with where the main function is, because main function is actually the starting point or the entrance of any exam. So here we can see we have defined an array which already have elements as 11, 15, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Now, what we have did is we actually use a third variable n, which is actually dividing the size of array to the size of its first element, so that we would have an actual size of an array. This would be used to traverse the root and for a lot more tasks that we're going to see further. We've actually defined a constant variable x with size 6. The reason behind this is because we already have 6 elements in our array. So first, we actually printed the array as an output so that the user will have seen that what the elements are stored in there. Now, to the part n, we actually initialize it with a deletion function that is user made, that we have named as delete element. We have passed the array, the size of the array, and the constant variable x here. Now, here we actually call the function. Now we will see what is the actual definition of this function here. This function is an integer type function where we call off for the array, an integer, and another integer. We started by declaring integer I for the looping purpose, where we actually checked that if the I matches the size, as x is actually denoting the size here, and analyzing it particularly. Now, here, as x is an element here, like as array is checking whether the element is present in array or not. If this happens, it will go to the next statement, which will actually be deleting that array by overwriting its index. So, in deletion, the major task that happens is actually overwriting. An element is never gonna like actually be deleted, but only get overwritten with another element. So here, even we can do one thing. Okay, so like first, like let's try this program this way and check how it goes. Now here, the important part to take notice is that the initial is this has been presented here, and x is the element that is present within the size or within the list or like within the array, which is basically to be searched and delete. Here the searching operation is taking place, and here actually this statement is actually overwriting, which is performing the deletion operation. So for the case first, as we have mentioned 6, which is actually present in the third position, then after all the searching and deletion, you can see the 6 is actually deleted from the array. Let's try it in one another way. So this is something statically happening. Now let's do it dynamically in the runtime. Let's have an input. Let's first like print a command for the user so that user will understand. Enter the element you wanted to delete. So now the user could be able to enter the element, and like let's take input to X. Now we are good to go, and like let's start this. So here is actually asking for enter the element you want to delete. Let me delete 9. Press enter. This was the initial array, and this is the modified final array, which actually vanished 9 from it. Now let's take another example and making it a bit more different, while we're also taking array as an input from user. And let's have the size of the array to be 6. And now let's start a looping starting a looping variable I. So here we are going to like actually implicitly define I, where we're going to like define it within the loop. Int I is less than equals to 5. And then like let's start with it, and let's take input cin and err I for the looping purpose. And let's have it, and like also like let's have a let's make it like more user friendly by putting like more written part over here, and like let's have it as enter the array you want. Let's have a run and let's see like how it goes. So here you can check some drawbacks that it's actually following the program, and the reason behind this fall is again a semantic error or logical error that we would like to emphasize over here. At this point of time, we actually made a small mistake that was like done in terms of the initialization. We haven't done the initialization yet, and this is an important part to be considered. Now let's see how it goes now. See, now it's worked. So like these are the small logical and semantical errors. Well, this error is particularly not logical but semantical, as we have made a wrong syntax over there, which isn't wrong, but we actually forgotten a part. So here, now let's enter the array. I'm gonna enter like 3, then 5, and then 7, then 9, and then 11, and then last but not the least, but 13. Now we have to write an element that we want to delete. Let's delete 13 from the end. And see, the initial array was this, and the final modified array is this. So this is how searching as well as deletion takes place into this program simultaneously. So let's do one more thing over here. Let's consider it for a tricky twist where we also want to check that how the searching operation is taking place. To emphasize that, we could actually do it like this way. Let's print a statement. Cout found the element, and let's also like print the element that is actually being found there. And don't forget to make it to a next line to make it like more comfortable. And let's print X over here. Now let's run it. Okay. Okay, all right, no worries. So like, okay, so like this error is actually a normal error that could happen to your program at some point of time, which you could like just make it right in a way that, and like this is actually the importance of using parentheses and the various things. So see, like while we were talking the importance of parentheses, this is what actually happened. Why there was like only one statement that was break, it was working fine. But when we have put it another statement, it was actually showing an error because the compiler is confused that whether the first one is being executed or the later one is being included within that if statement or not. Now let's enter the array we want. Let's do this even number this time. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So now we want to delete 4 and see. After it actually printed found the element 4 and then printed the modified array to make it like more specifically like better in terms of user interface. Let's put a space over there so like it will be better. And again, put like this. I'm just like putting the natural number starting from 1 to 6 actually. Now I'm gonna like delete 3 in between and see. Here you can find that the initial array was this. Then the element we wanted to delete was 3. So it was like found the element 3. And a modified array is something like this: 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. So this is how both the operations are taking place simultaneously, and we have examined them and knew the importance of them. Now, apart from this, we have some specific things that we are going to like cover. Let's go back to our slides, and after deletion, we have searching that we covered. Updating is actually updating an element to a particular index that we have already used into all of these examples. So updating was a part that is like update the value of an element that is pre-existed there. Now, let's hop on to the next thing that we have for now. So now you all were familiar with the various operations about or in an array, you know, a specific thing. It's important to understand that what advantages and disadvantages do it have in C or C++. Here, we have specifically chosen it to be defined around C and C++ because both the languages holds a similar background and have a lot of similarity into the various terms. Now, the advantages of an array are it is randomly access the elements using an array index as we have used during searching and during deletion, but when we randomly access to the various locations for any operation specific, use less line of code to create a single array to a multiple elements. Yeah, this another truth. Like an array is holding as many possible elements as required by user. If, for example, let's take that we have to count or we have to make a database or data structure of people living in New York or Las Vegas. What if we have to define a specific variable to number each and every citizen or people? It would be so hard because it might be millions and billions of people. So let's say, for example, in New Jersey area or in Bay Area, there were 15,000 people living in the nearby apartments of a particular demographic location. If a programmer have to create a program where he need to enroll all of them and give them a specific number, he would be met over creating and will be not possible for him to create 15,000 variables. At this point of time, he can use array where each and every citizen or a people can be defined as an element and could be stored their number within them. Third part is easy to access all element. As we have seen that we can easily access the element. Traversal through the array become easy using single loop. Yeah, for traversing an element, like traversing in an array for searching of an element for doing any specific task, it is very easy as we can do it within a single loop, as we have also examined into a various example that we have came through up to now. Storing becomes easy. It can be accomplished by writing less line of codes as we have like seen before. Now moving on to some disadvantages. As a coin have two faces, it also have some specific disadvantages. That is, allow a fixed number of elements to be entered, which is decided at a time of declaration. As we have seen this as a major drawback, that you have to define a maximum size of array that you wanted. This becomes a tough task while you have a variable database. So that's a small drawback. The next one is insertion and deletion of element can be costly since the elements are needed to be merged in accordance with the new memory allocation. Yeah, this is something that we have examined into the program of our deletion. When after deleting any element, all the subsequent elements that are present next to them have to shift their indexing one place. So while doing it for multiple test cases, it would be a bit costly and it will consume more time and more memory. So at this point of time, we have covered all of this. We are clear with array. Now, at the ending of this session and the topic of array, we are going to compare array with pointers. So array and pointers are two different things. The confusion happened because array name indicates the address of the first element and always pass as a pointer. So this is something that we have observed. So the name of array is actually the address of its first element. So this was a quite confusing as a pointer as well holds an address, but an array and pointers are two different things. While we will be emphasizing over this specific topic a lot more to the upcoming time. Now, before ending this, I would just like to give a small outreach of how array can be substituted with another thing known as STL, which is actually a vector class, which is actually the main topic or the major topic of your next week. A vector in C++ is a class in STL that represents an array. The advantages of vector over normal arrays are we do not need to pass size of an extra parameter. When we declare a vector, that is, vectors support dynamic size, we do not have to initially specify the size of vector. We can also resize a vector. That means the major drawback that we have discussed before over here, that the elements have a fixed number which are initialized at the part of declaration. With vector, we can actually cope the situation. And vector have a lot of built-in functions like removing element or adding elements, so that like we don't have to specifically program all of this from scratch that we have done in array. So we are done for today's week, and we have completed all the major topics that are included in this introduction session. I hope this session was somehow fruitful to you and you have learned a lot. Apart from this, if you find any confusion, any issue, or facing any difficulty at any point of time, feel free to reach us out. At the description of video, we have our various links that could be fruitful to you, as well as we will be defining the various resources that you will require in the description. See you guys. You will catch me again in your final week, where we would be working together for a major project. So till then, happy learning. Have a great day. Bye-bye.